let's go ahead and start. Talk about a couple other little things first. First one, those of you that walk in late, when class ends, get me to mark the attendance, because I'm actually in the afternoon class on the computer right now. So while I'm recording it this morning, since I do it through Collaborate, it's live out there. Somebody goes into it, and I'm putting it in the afternoon class if I'm not going to meet them today. So that way, if they want to watch it live, they can watch live. Okay. And then I'll put the recording back into our class. Probably tonight. Well, it may not be tonight, maybe tomorrow. You realize I'm not going to be online tonight. So we've got that going right now. The chapter's not got a ton of stuff in it, so y'all think it's pretty quick to go over it. Because I made it through it all in the Collaborate session on Monday evening. So I know, I have no idea what's in there. So at this point, this week, you do have an exam on modules 4 through 7. Okay. That's due Monday. I keep looking over there thinking I'm going to see the picture on the screen, but not the text up there for the module instead. So that's this week, due Monday night. Okay. And in this class, I do give you 2 tries at it's the higher score. But you have to do them both by the deadline. You don't do by the deadline. If you only do one by the deadline, you don't get to take the retest later. Okay, so they follow on that. And it is the higher score, and it appears apparently Cisco's got it set right now where it actually does record the higher score. If it doesn't, send me a note and tell me. Okay. And email, I did, was a little slower the last few days, but I've pretty well kept up with it and actually have already did answer at least one email from a student this morning, I believe. Pretty sure I answered one down there. I know I sent an email out. I think I answered it. Maybe I did. So as Monday, I did 4 Collaborate sessions Monday morning. Sunday afternoon, evening, I drove to Alpharetta and issued it in the hotel. Our state reservation system told me the address of one Holiday Inn Express in Alpharetta, and my reservation was at another Holiday Inn Express in Alpharetta. And I didn't know there were 2 Holiday Inn Expresses in Alpharetta, and they're owned by different people. So I got there, and the hotel said, we have no record of it. But they checked me on in and gave me rates. And said, we can take care of that anyway. Then I got to the room, looked it up in the state system, discovered I had a reservation that was not cancelable after 24 hours beforehand at this other address, like 2 miles down the road. So then I went and told the guy at the one I was at, and he said, okay, I can put you back out here, and no record. But he said, but go call the other hotel first to make sure you do have a reservation before we go to that trouble. Called them, they said, yep, we got a reservation for you here. And I told the lady what was going on, and she said, oh, okay, no problem. She said, I'll just cancel your reservation, no fees on it. okay, that'll work for me. And I said, can you send me a confirmation that you really did this and what you've done? That was Sunday night. I'm still waiting for that email, but I do know it got canceled because I did find that a little later on the system. But whether it got canceled correctly or not, I'm not for sure, but I'm pretty sure it did. I need to go check the credit card.
Hoping it all comes up wash.
Because the only thing I had done was take all the stuff up to the room, set up my computer and got on it, and I hadn't touched the room otherwise. And the guy knew, because he'd seen me carrying my stuff in and how quick it was. It was unlikely I'd done anything to the room. So I hadn't even gone in the bathroom at that point. So it literally was just me setting up and connecting to the internet. Then Monday morning, I did 4 collaborating sessions, 8, 9, 10, and 11 o'clock. I don't like doing a collaborating session at 8 a.m. That was 1 p.m. when I moved to 8 a.m. I'm not a morning person, in case y'all haven't figured that one out yet. Then I went to the training that afternoon. It was interesting things they told us about AWS. It really wasn't training on AWS. Really wasn't sure when I was sent to it. From what they said on it, I was a little confused what exactly we were doing, but they kept saying, we're going to do training and we're going to do information about AWS. Well, it's information about AWS, but not training. So education-wise, there's 2 programs they have out there. There's Educate and an Academy. We are already an academy, and that's a more structured thing, and actually their stuff looks in a lot of ways similar to what you're doing in Cisco. Not the same material, but the layout, okay? And how it's so complete on stuff. Not quite as complete. Nobody's as good as Cisco. Everybody claims when they go to an academy that their academies like Cisco's. But nobody ever gets set up to that level. Cisco's been doing this since 1997, I think. Just when they started their academy. 97, 90, maybe it was 98 or 99, but it was tail end of the 90s. I've been doing Cisco Academy since 2001. Although apparently by their record somewhere, I started in 2000, but I just happened to notice that in 2015, they gave me my 15-year certificate. Of course, in 2013, they gave me my 10-year certificate when they started giving out year certificates. So I was getting a certificate for experience. So I'm stacked about those ones. So sometime this year, it looks like I'll get a 20-year certificate. In my mind, a year ahead of time, but that's okay. And they've improved their stuff as we've gone along the way. And y'all are in the very latest generation of it, which actually is version 7. But you may have seen that on some stuff on it. So it's the 7th version of it in 20 years. So it's about every 3 years they're doing. That's a pretty good pace. They say it costs them $1 million to develop each one of the classes they have out there because of all the work that they put into it and everything. I don't know about that figure, but that's the number they've sworn up and down for 20 years. So must have some factual basis on it that was held up for 20 years. So they told us about the 2 education programs. Educate. Academy is a much more structured one. Educate's just a lot of materials out there. I'm actually already an instructor in it, but the school's not a member school of Educate, but we are of Academy. I'm a member of Educate. Then in the process, so we did that Monday afternoon, all afternoon. Had a AWS person tell us all about it. And AWS has got some interesting things out there. To listen to a number of people in the room with me that day, you'd think AWS is going to stay the top cloud provider forever. But it's just like in discussion from week 3, which I had about the browser, but y'all haven't seen discussions, which all computer said. Most of you, Tyler and Dale, I guess, both in other classes, I think. So they've seen discussions. And the same discussion in each class, although I say right about that class. And it's interesting when I was reading all of the discussion posts about browsers, I asked people about what were the most popular browsers out there and about what effect is the new Edge going to have. Because the Edge has been rewritten onto the Chromium platform, which is the open source engine behind most of the browsers, except Edge until now, and IE. IE was on its whole separate thing when it was first created back in 97, 98, somewhere, actually back in 95 or 96, because it came out with Windows 95, so it's actually developed back in 94, 95. So that same time period we said Cisco came from. That the others are all on the Chromium one, which was developed by Google and actually belongs to Google, but it's an open source, free platform anybody can use and play with the source stuff on it and the basic stuff to do a browser. Microsoft's now using on the new Edge. I have not downloaded that Edge and tried it yet. The second version of it is now out. It just came out this week.
Really?
That they've already had some major revisions to it. Well, when they put it out there and started using it, beyond beta testing, stuff turned up on it. Notice no matter how well you beta test it, when you put it out in real production, whatever you put out there, people are all of a sudden going to do things to it that nobody thought about when they were ones testing the software. Beta testing should catch those things, but people that do the beta testing just, well, usually where you got real live people going, not just official testers. Alpha testing is usually just official testers, and they're just looking at what you're expecting to be done and what things you expect people to do wrong. So when you put it into the real thing, you find out other stuff. So that's out there, but I had comments from a number of students saying that Chrome is the #1 browser out there, which it is, and that it will always be the #1 browser, and they will always use it. I remember people telling me the same thing on Netscape when IE came out, and Netscape has not existed for a number of years. Firefox is actually the descendant of it. And people saying that about IE, and nobody uses. That's not hardly used anymore. It actually is being literally discontinued by Microsoft at this point. So it won't be on new stuff anymore. So in 10 years, I put a note on several students, come back in 5 or 10 years and tell me again on this statement you just made about what your favorite browser is at that point. It may well not, it possibly maybe in 5 years, but I sort of doubt in 10 years. I don't know what it's going to be in 10 years. I suspect something else may well be there instead of Chrome. So it's always interesting on that one. Then yesterday we met for most of the day. We actually did a little bit of training type, but not really in the afternoon. We talked about curriculum in the morning. And hopefully we'll be able to start offering a cloud option and networking, possibly as soon as fall, but whether we will or not, I don't know. Because the first problem is I'm the only one here that is certified in AWS. You've got to be certified in it to teach the AWS courses. Well, I'm only certified in the first course. The next 3 are supposed to be a bit harder. And they take twice as long to learn it. So I don't know if I have all 3 of those. In June, I'm scheduled to take training for the second. And I'm actually scheduled out there that they gave me access to training for all 3 elements. And that would be the first restriction on us here, is we've got to have somebody that could teach the 4 courses. So, but hopefully we can start offering that somewhere in the near future. And we may not offer the whole specialization, but add course on graduate and be electives. But that depends on how fast the state approves these standards too. And me and the guy at the state level get them written. But I've got all the time in the world. I'm sitting around boards. You'd think I could write them this afternoon. I did get your first assignment graded last week. So module 2 is graded if you haven't gone out and looked. I think some people in here got it back with a note on it with a 0 on it and a note that said fix and repair. Fix and resubmit. Name on the desktop. Okay? That's what they got returned for. They got returned. But pretty much I think y'all had it right on it, although I'm not sure if everybody had turned it in. Between the 2 classes of my in-person ones, which I graded both somewhere there, last weekend something. But I got them done. I'm not sure when I got them done exactly. That may have been Sunday night sitting in the hotel. But they got done something. Maybe Saturday or sometime. So if you did get them back with that, fix that. And also, if you had turned in the next modules and had put your name on them, fix that ASAP and resubmit them. Although they haven't been graded yet. Because since they haven't been graded yet, if you resubmit them corrected, what will get graded is the resubmitted. If I've already graded them, I'm not going to grade them again unless I've told you to resubmit. Okay? So they follow on that. So after that, if you start doing it, or if there's something else right now you realized in module 3, 4, 5, whatever, that you didn't do something or did it wrong, fix it real quick before I get to grading notes. Okay? Somebody follow on that? And that goes on any future ones also. If I haven't graded it yet and you realize something's wrong, you can get it back in. Okay? But there is, if the ding's not on the desktops, on future ones, there's a penalty. And I sent y'all an email on that when I finished the grading too, telling you you had a chance. Besides fixing that one, you had a chance to correct the others. Because there was obviously some people in all 3 classes did not get the name on the desktop part. And I've had that every semester. That's not something to do. And I added more stuff out there for y'all trying to tell you how to do it. Because I've got video out there where I show you how to do it. Besides my directions, I think I've corrected everywhere. I may not have where it says the direction, put your name in the desktop on some later assignments. But I know I've got it corrected on the first couple, telling you which icon to use. Okay. And as soon as I change all of those in there, Cisco will make a change to packet tracer and move icons around here. And then my directions all be wrong with you. So that's done. Then I went to the Capitol yesterday with the leadership class. That was interesting down there. We had a picture taken with the governor in front of us as a group. I haven't seen the picture yet, so I don't know how well it came out. And then we had our picture taken in the House down there. We couldn't go in the Senate, although there was Jeff Mullis that we couldn't get us in the Senate. They weren't legislative in session, but Emory had a class meeting in the Senate when we went to take us in there. So we took us over to the House. They got us in. There was nobody in there. So they got us on in there and we did a picture of that big room instead. Had a number of people talk to us during the day, and they got back here about 4:30 yesterday, 4:30, 4:45 church. I did a collaborate session Monday night after I got back to the motel room. And then last night after I got home from church, I did a collaborate session for another class last night. It should have been done at 2 o'clock on Monday. Next week looks like at this point, I should be here all week and everything should be fine. This morning, I was on time. A couple of y'all saw me walking down the hall at about 9:15. I took Palo Alto cybersecurity, certified cybersecurity associate in South Vegas. I got in there at 8:30 and actually started it somewhere, I think it says 8:35 or 8:40, somewhere in there. And it took me about 30 minutes that I was out of there. I did pass it. This is one of those tests that they don't give you any score on, as far as what the overall score was on. So I don't know what the overall score was on. It told me in their different domains, what I made on each domain. My scores range from 40 to 100 on the different domains. Looking at them, I'm guessing I made probably about 80. So I don't know how much each domain counted. But I passed, and that was the key part. So that's done and out of the way. And I had to do that before by Saturday. Maybe by Sunday. I guess by Saturday, because Saturday's the 15th. The 15th was my deadline. And it was basic stuff. I know the question I probably missed on it was where they had specific Palo Alto things. I haven't worked with Palo Alto devices other than the training. And I did the training, actually the last training session I attended was like a year and a half ago. So specific little things on their stuff, I don't necessarily remember. But most of it I sat there and looked at and I went narrow on every question. I even knew the answers right off, or I could eliminate 2 of the answers right off. I sat there in some cases, debated the other 2. So that's done. All right, now let's do module 7, which is Ethernet. Okay. And so we're still on layer 2. Okay. So we follow that one. And Ethernet is going to be the standard that you use mostly out there in the world dealing with LANs for layer 2. Okay. Wired. And actually you're using Ethernet in some cases across the LANs today, the wide area networks. So it's definitely on the LAN, the local area network, and is used sometimes for wide area networks. Okay. The standards on it is that we're using IEEE standards for Ethernet, and that you're going to use for Ethernet 802.11, not 802.2 and 802.3. Okay. 802.2 is going to be the standard on it that deals with the wiring and physical stuff. So 802.2 is going to be used with the MAC sublayer and the physical layer. So they follow that part. 802.3 is dealing with the software side of it, and that's going to be used with the LLC sublayer. Remember the 2 and the 3, the 802.2 and the 802.3. Okay, those 2 numbers will appear on tests and certifications. Usually not, I really don't remember seeing along the way, and again, I have not looked at y'all's test and it's a new test on it, but I have not seen in previous things, the different things I've taken, really asking you in terms of which one goes to which layer. Okay, but for you to realize, being told there's 2 standards being used on this, why is there 2 and 3? then raises a question of telling you what sublayers it falls into. Okay? But the two numbers is the two parts I would tell you to remember. So Ethernet should be used on that. Actually, you've also got, and it's actually part of it, that's for the wire, the 2 and the 3. For wireless, you're going to use 802.11. And if any of y'all looked at your boxes, when you bought wireless things or whatever, you will find on it, somewhere on there, that it says 802.11 and some letters. So you should see that on there, but I see the letters on here, but
On the side. Here.
oh, it's on it. You got a different box.
That
than I
different
got.
box, yeah, but it's,
There it is, yeah. Standard. 802.11n, 802.11g, and then it mentions it also does use 802.3, and it's using 802.11b and 802. Couple of 3s on it, the U and the AB in there too. But the 11 is the important one off of it. Now, if you look at the very latest ones, although I haven't seen them in the stores, I haven't found any with wireless devices in a couple months when they would have started appearing on it. You may well see them saying 6 on it now, just the number 6 or wireless 6. That instead of, because actually, if you're using AC, because the letter that comes after it, or letters, now we're into 2 letters, associates with the speed of it and the bandwidth. Okay, and we did A and B originally, A and C, and B originally, and then we went to G, M, and then AC, which is where we're at. But instead of continuing for the top regular people to see on there, that instead of saying with that letter, which is confusing to general people, because like on this one, if you look on it, you see that big N there. It's because it was using the N standards. Okay, so it's 802.11n. Now it's AC. And it's AC because you're actually running 2 speeds on now the newest standard. You're close up to the device, you use one, and then if you get away from it, you use another, which is a little slower, but goes further. And so now they're trying to switch over to going to AC is version 6. We'll see how that goes. But that's the thought out there, and there's a push to do that. But like I say, I have not looked at wireless devices to see are they actually pushing that number 6 on.
so they're like calling it wireless 6, is what they're calling it.
Wireless 6. But that is still 802.11 AC is what it really is behind it. IEEE is the one that came up with standards. Okay, they do a bunch of cabling standards, etc. out there. So you're going to see them on. So that's for regular wireless. There is also 802.5. If I'm not
15.
Huh?
15, 802.
Oh, 15. I had 5, missed the 1.
You were
15 is going to be Bluetooth and NPC, if I'm remembering the letters correctly. Is that the right letters?
Yeah.
Near product code or something. That's actually where you can hold your phone up close to another device, and you actually do that on Apple Pay and some, where you're not needing to touch it on it. RFID will actually fall under 12, isn't it? I believe it is.
I think so, yeah. I
Um,
was trying to look for it because I read it, I just don't remember.
I think it's 12 is RFID, which is the tags on the devices and stuff, and where they can go through and inventory a store where it actually transmits stuff off on it. real close but not far off, and then also do some inventory control and stuff like that. And there's, you can read all kinds of weird things on RFID, radio frequency identification. There's people out there convinced it's going to be used to keep up with where all of us are, that it's a way to figure out what devices you've got in your house. There's all kinds of conspiracy theories on it that y'all can go out and find on RFID. Okay? Main thing what it's really used for is it is put on shipping containers and on actually more expensive devices and stuff as a way to be able to keep up and identify each one of them, where it came from, and have a more way to follow it closely. The NPC, and I'm pretty sure it's NPC, but maybe I'll reverse on that one, is when you can hold devices close together and they're not touching. They got to be real close. They got to be like in a 3 foot or a 1 foot range where it pick up on the other. I want to say things like Apple Pay and some of those are using that, and where you can just hold your device close to, like on the Coke machine, and it charges your card down through Apple Pay on it instead of, but you don't have to touch on it, but you've got to be close. We can stand here, I can grab his iPhone, I don't know if he's got my phone or not anyway, and buy myself a Coke from down, buy whoever's standing there at the Coke machine a Coke right now from here. It's got to be close to it. So they follow on that, which is the near on the end. Okay?
Yeah.
And sometimes when we've talked about the PANs, the personal area networks, that it definitely fits in the PAN, and PAN can be bigger than it also, but those in this chapter they put into PAN. Okay? Where we talked about the 802.11, the 802.3, and 2 actually being LANs normally, and actually the other gets into the wireless area networks. All right, the frame itself, as far as Ethernet, is still the same frame as you had for frames that we talked about in the previous chapter. It's the same stuff in there, except they actually mentioned to you about use of the type here, okay? That the different Ethernet frames have different types on. I mentioned to you when we touched on token ring up here about the token frame had a different identifier on it, and that's where it identified was on that frame type. So it's the same basic frame. It's a tiny bit different that Ethernet has its definition for, but it's the same essential frame. A start byte, an end byte, the destination MAC address, the source MAC address, encapsulating the packet in there, which has got the data in it, which we'll get to in the next chapter. And then the type and some other information, and even the encapsulated packet could have padding on it if the packet is smaller than what the minimum data area is for a frame. It will put spaces on the back of it to make it big enough. So that's the big part on that part. But they do mention on 802.2 and 3 about speeds on there. And if we looked at this, back to the standards, standard, somewhere on the box it will tell us, should tell us this one runs at 10, 100, and 1000. Per box may have it clearer than my box, yes. This one requires up-to-date Windows XP, Vista, or Vista 64-bit. Usually speeds are on here.
It's just saying speeds of wireless G down here. It's not really, I'm saying it's not
That was a G. Okay.
wireless G, yeah.
Okay, so that one's an older one than this one. This is an N, which means you'll run at G-speed that runs for further up pattern line.
Because it's just
Oh,
asking for
here,
Ethernet
it
six.
tells me on the back that it's faster than 10/100 ones. That one will actually only go to 100. I think it goes to 1,000. If I'm remembering my numbers right. But you did have on Ethernet the original standard, which was the 3, was for 10, and then the G should have given us the 100, and the N goes to the 1,000, and the AC, you can actually, I think you can actually go faster than 1,000, but it'll still, 1,000 is where we're basically at nowadays. Although, Ethernet standards are out there for 40 gig, and for 10 gig, 40 gig, and 100 gig. The only place I have seen 40 gig devices is when I took a technical tour of SunTrust Stadium, the Braves Stadium, a year ago. That they're using 40 gig input into the stadium. Everything in there is Cisco equipment, except for the 2 devices. That's the routers connecting to the outside world, and they got 2 Juniper boxes there, because at the time that they built the stadium, Cisco didn't have any boxes that worked at 40 gig. Juniper did, and so they had to go get 2 Juniper boxes. And they're using Comcast, if I'm remembering right, is the provider in it. But there's supposed to be a Cisco facility, except Cisco didn't have right then what they needed. So they had to put 2 boxes in there. So I saw those 2 Juniper boxes that were 40 gig. I have not seen any 100 gig. You can go find 10 gig ones if you're rid of downtown Chattanooga, because EPB has 10 gig service in downtown Chattanooga. Okay?
It is.
EPB, which is the one that put the 1 gig there initially and made Chattanooga Gig City. Now you've got other providers doing 1 gig service now besides EPB, but EPB is the first one to do it. Okay? And now EPB's got 10 gig, and I'm not sure, but I think Comcast may have 10 gig there too. But I know EPB does have 10 gig in downtown. I'm not sure who else. And that's something that could change daily. So it could have even changed that another provider's now got 10 gig somewhere around here. So I don't know. And yes. So you just realize sometimes some things I'll tell you, we could be off the road. But when SunTrust did it with 40 gig coming in, that was completely bleeding edge. Now you can also do 100 gig, but say I have not seen or heard of anybody having 100 gig. Okay? And SunTrust is the only place I've heard of having 40 gig. Okay? And that's not to say that they may not have even bumped up their service since I saw this. I'll say that was a year, I guess a year and a half ago. I was thinking that was August of 2019. I did not sure. And they're going to upgrade as they go along too. Besides changing names of stadiums. It's not SunTrust anymore. It's now Truist. And if you drive by the stadium, the big sign up on the side of the stadium is down right now, and they have to put a new one up there. So I rode by it yesterday. I noticed that over there. And I had noticed the other day that it was down, but I haven't seen them. But it still had not put up a new one. So that's those. We've related it into the OSI model. I've told you about it on the MAC sublayers. We've talked about the MAC layers, so that takes care of that one. MAC addressing. Those are the same MAC addresses we mentioned in the previous chapters. There's not anything different about that. We're still talking about your 128-bit, 32-byte addresses. Okay? Not byte, but half bytes, 32 hex character addresses. We do that correctly. So that all stays the same, not anything different from the previous chapter to this chapter. Or actually, I guess that was chapter 5, I think. 6 was number systems, I think. Or whichever chapters they were, modules. And then they talk about switch speeds. Let me scroll down here, make sure I didn't skip over anything. No, I didn't. Then they talk about switch speeds, which we actually just talked a little bit about. But a couple of things on the switching, which the switch speed is, we really do. On the switches, and we're aware too, so we're dealing with switches, okay? And you're talking about frames. So on the switch, when the frame comes into the switch and comes in, the switch hooks at it, when the switch is an intelligent device, it looks at that frame and then sends it out on the port that it belongs to based on its MAC switching table, okay? Where it's got all MAC addresses stored according to which port. So then it sends it out. If it knows that address, it sends it out on the right port. If it doesn't know the address it's going to, it then sends it out on its default gateway, okay? But here's what happens in there, is that switches can be set up to deal with those frames in a couple of ways to speed the process up. Does everybody follow on that part? The traditional way that it was done was store and forward. You brought the entire frame in, then you looked at the frame, checked its sum that it's got on it to make sure the whole thing was received intact. I'm trying to think what you want, the checksum on it, sorry about that. So, check the checksum, so you calculate the checksum, check it to make sure it matched what was in the frame, and then forward it to wherever the destination was, using the rules we just said. If it's in the switching table, send it to the correct port that it's supposed to be on. If it's not in the switching table, send it to the default gateway. But you brought the entire frame in and then did that. So we follow on that? Now, you as a user didn't do anything with any of that. This is all happening in the switch. You as the network administrator are concerned with that, okay? You're going to set up how it gets done. Does everybody follow on that? So there's a difference when I say on it of what happens. But with store and forward, the entire frame comes in, is checked, and then forward. Okay? The next one that they mentioned to you is cut through. And with cut through, and I believe they give you 2 cut throughs. Yes. But with cut through forward team, it's going to be faster than storing forward. Yeah.
So like, I just got a notification on my computer saying the firewall is down on it.
Oh, ignore that. They don't have the firewall set up on the individual machines.
Okay.
That's the way the school's done it. We do have a firewall that sits on the network, and that's what they've chosen, just to use their physical firewall. If I was setting it up, I would use both. And that's the recommendations, and actually that was one of the questions on my test this morning, of whether you should have firewalls on individual machines when you've got a perimeter firewall. Because you really need the firewalls on the individual machines, which was the question on it. Because the perimeter firewall is checking stuff coming in and out of our network. But when he sends something to you, Tyler, It doesn't go out to the perimeter. It stays purely in the network.
So if
Guess
someone
what?
has-
It didn't get checked. So if he sends you a virus, and I'm not accusing you of sending a virus, I could use different ones of y'all in examples, but it works a little better if I can say one of you does something to somebody else, y'all picture it better. And I picture it better. Let's put it that way. Definitely I picture it better, and I assume y'all do too. Then it doesn't get checked because it never got out there to the firewall. It never went out to the power fence. I'll follow on that.
So all the computers are vulnerable to it.
So there's some increased vulnerability on it because of that. However, it means there's not a firewall running on your machine, so theoretically it makes all the machines run a fraction faster because the individual machines aren't checking and stuff. Now, the firewall they've got is a much better firewall than Windows has on your machines. And you can buy better software firewalls also, but they're not as good as that physical firewall, which I think is, it's either a Cisco or a Palo Alto one, and I don't remember which one they got me. And they may have even switched in the last few years. So my normal recommendation to you is run firewalls in both places. And like at home on you, you've got an implicit firewall in your DSL cable router. There is a firewall, part of a firewall in there by default. And then on your machine, I would definitely run your Windows firewall, or if you bought a firewall from whoever, most of your antivirus providers all sell you firewalls also. And there are some of the free ones out there. So like Avast continuously tells me I really ought to buy the paid product of it instead of the free product, that I'll get firewall also with that. Well, I'm content with the way I've got it protected now, without spending money. If Avast will get me a pay raise here at school, then maybe I'll think about buying their firewall. You got realize I was at the legislature yesterday, and I know there's no pay raise coming for me this year. Because the state's the only pay raise the state's talking about giving is just the $2,000 the governor requested for teachers, and I'm not a teacher. I'm not teaching K through 12. And there's nothing about any other pay raises in there. Then, so with FAST, and y'all are allowed to have a message pop up in y'all's machines about wanting to do an update on Windows also. Just ignore it, but it shouldn't be on y'all's, but it may pop up. Because they have actually released here at the school, I think, the fall update to Windows. Because my machine had the message on it when I was up there this morning. So, but the fast forward or cut through, particularly the cut through. Cut through is the bigger problem. Cut through forward is what happens is as the frame comes in, it looks at the first part of the frame, and I think it's 64 bytes if I remember right. Okay, but it looks at the very first part of the frame, looks at that, and at that point it's seeing the destination address. Okay, it's not looked at the whole frame, so it can't make sure doing the checksum. Okay, it looks at that address and goes, okay, here's the address it goes to. And instead of bringing it all in, look at it, and then send it out, it immediately starts sending it out whichever port it belongs on. So you can follow on that? So the train's coming in, and we're switching the tracks and sending it out straight on out, as opposed to on store and forward, the train comes into the station, stops, and then we figure out which way to change the tracks to send it out. Does everybody follow on that? Now, obviously, if you look at those two, the cut through is going to be faster than store and forward, which is the reason for doing it. Okay? Then the reasoning in it is most frames are good frames. And that all we need to figure out where to start sending it, and when we start sending it on out and speed it up, is that destination address. and we can get it through on the network much faster. Now, here's the problem. Fragments out there, which we talked about, from collisions and other things. If it comes in as a fragment and has an address on the front end of it, and it's at least the minimum size it's looking for, it's going to go ahead and forward that fragment on out. Y'all follow on that? And keep it on going. So some bad traffic can get forwarded. So on the cut through, there's actually two subparts to it, which they throw to you, which is the fast forward switching and the fragment free switching. Fast forward basically is what we just talked about. Fragment free says we go a little bit bigger to check that it's a larger amount of it there, but still not the whole thing, and make sure it's there, okay? So we still will send on fragment free, can send some fragments, but most fragments are going to be smaller than whatever the number is that they use to look at all, okay? You still don't know that, you still don't check some on it. But you're taking a bigger part of it before you start forwarding. Okay, so everybody follow on that? You're making sure there's more of it there, which pretty much will get rid of fragments, because most of your fragments are smaller than that number, and that's where they're coming from the number from. Just analyze lots of traffic and out of the number. And actually, I think if I'm remembering right, you can actually change that number in that. You can go in your configuration of your switch, which I've already started learning how to do, and that you can change, besides choosing which one of those two you want, or three really, but two major areas, that you can also choose what's the minimum size you want to see on. So you could analyze the traffic on your network and go, okay, all of our fragments are this no bigger than this size, so we'll look just a little beyond that and not stop fragments, because they won't be big enough to forward. But that speeds up your network on it, and that's used on the switch. Store and forward, cut through, you need to know them both. Those will be questions for you. I've seen questions all over the place on those. Okay?
You said most people use the fragment
The fragment free is not used as much
as much.
as on it, okay? Fragment, because initially it was just that fast forward on cut through, and then people got concerned about how many fragments they were forwarding on it, and so then you came up with fragment free, where you went, okay, we'll make it where they can do bigger pieces you go up to try to eliminate fragments. But even fragment free is not 100% fragment free, so they follow on that, and we've already figured that out in this course. Stuff, there's no, a lot of things, there's no absolute on it, okay? We're reducing on it. It's just like when we talked about CSMA CD last week, that we said on that, your object is to reduce the number of collisions to a minimum, but you're not going to get them to zero. Okay? But if you get to zero, you've changed your whole network structure at that point where you're doing avoidance instead of detection. I bet that's, and it notes in there that if you're that you can also set it where that, when the numbers get too high on what it is forwarding that are fragments, it will automatically do it on some intelligent switches. If they've got more intelligence on it, it will adjust the numbers up to cut it out. So you can do that on it. All right. Then they talk about duplex, which I think I've mentioned to y'all before. Full duplex and half duplex. I'm no idea. Okay. Full duplex says you can talk both directions at the same time. When you're using 1,000 and faster megabits or 1 gigabit, you are going to use full duplex. And you're going to use 2 pairs of wires to each
one pair of send on and one pair of receive lots. You've got two separate wires running on. If you're using 100 can actually be done at full duplex or half duplex. If you're doing only 10, you're doing half duplex.
And the difference in full and half is like a walkie-talkie. Like the half
Walkie-talkie is half duplex.
Right.
Okay? Which is the example I was coming to.
Okay, sorry.
Now she's reading my mind ahead. This is scary. I get ahead of the book and now she's getting ahead of me.
Right, I have to hear you say it so it clicks and then I write it down.
What's in module 8?
Okay. Yeah, right, I don't know that yet. I'm not that good.
Okay. Half duplex is what was traditionally done. Half duplex says you can either send or you can receive. You can do both of those, but you can only do one at a time. As she said, it's like a walkie-talkie or a CB radio or a ham radio. Okay? Because you can only talk or you can listen. But you can't do both things at the same time. Everybody follow on that? Full duplex is like a telephone and like normal life. We can talk on the telephone at the same time we listen. Okay? So she and I can have a telephone conversation. She can get mad at me and start yelling at me, and she can hear me yell back at her at the same time she yells at me. Right? But we were having a polite conversation. We're not normally talking both at the same time. That's when we get mad at each other. But we usually start going full duplex, really communicate. Or that she suddenly decides that was the dumbest statement she ever put out of my mouth. Okay, and she just breaks in. And she may do that right here in class. Tyler may do the same thing, Dale may do the same thing at me also. You just said, what? Or you may decide that was the best thing you ever heard me say and do the same thing. Okay? But full duplex is both sides can talk at the same time and listen at the same time. Obviously, full duplex is a whole lot faster than half duplex. Because half duplex, it takes you a lot longer to do the conversation when you have to keep waiting your turn to talk. Because just like talking with any one of you in here, if we go to doing a fully half duplex conversation and y'all had those and then in where that's what you were required to do, it takes us a little bit longer to convey our information back and forth to each other, right? But as I'm talking to you, that if you agree or disagree on it, you can go ahead and say it right in there and not have to wait till I finish and pause. Well, I can find out much quicker what you're thinking on it, and we can move our conversation along much quicker on full duplex. So that's all full duplex is versus half duplex. We're moving into a full duplex world. We were previously in a half duplex world. As we've gotten these faster speeds, we've gone to full duplex. So they follow on that part? So that's all those are on full versus half duplex. So they talk about those. And we've really talked about speeds already, some on it, but they tell you the same thing I just told you on it. On those where I've talked about the 10, the 100, and the 1,000. And if you, machines will actually, when they set up onto the network, they'll actually negotiate about full duplex versus half duplex. Or you can actually set them and say it has to be at half duplex or full duplex, but if you tell it it has to be at full duplex, and the other device is half duplex is connected to, no connection occurs, because it can't do it. Like you said, this machine will only run at full duplex. But if you allow it to negotiate itself, it can do either one. Okay? Then the last thing in the chapter they talk about is the auto MDIX, or you'll see that as AMDIX also out there. That is ports on your switches and routers, not on the PC. I have never seen them on PCs yet. Okay? We've talked about on speeds. Okay? well, not on speeds, but we just talked about here on the full duplex type thing. And with full duplex, remember I said it's using 4 wires, 2 pairs. 1 pair to receive on, 1 pair to send on. As you look at your switches, routers, and PCs, actually, those items that are on the same odd or even layer, all of the devices on odd layers, all have set up on them that the port it sends out on, they all agree on which port they send on, not the port, but which pins they send on, and which pins they receive on. Those devices on even layers will use it the opposite way around. Okay, now what that means is, if you're plugging your PC into a switch, PC is down there on layer 1, switch is on layer 2. You can use a straight through cable, which is actually what these are right here, to connect the 2 devices. The pins on both ends of that wire are exactly the same. So what's in pin 1 coming in pin 1 goes out on pin 1 on the other end. The PC sees on that end, it may see it as send, and the switch is seeing that as receive. So they effectively talk across there. Y'all follow on that? Because they're reversed on the 2 ends. Okay? The switch can go to the router the same way. But if we're plugging the switch into another switch, you got a problem. The 2 switches both are using the same pins to send on and the same pins to receive on. We'll sort of back to that half duplex part of the thing, but if you put a straight through cable on there, they're both trying to send across the same wire, and they're listening on the same wire, and guess what? No communications occurs. Don't follow on that? So you have to use a crossover cable in that case, which is what we're all going to make in a week or 2. Okay, straight through and crossover and roll. And you've already seen the use of the rollover, because that's what you used in your first assigned lab to connect the console to the console port. So if you're going to connect 2 of the same devices together, you have to use a crossover cable. If you want to connect your PC to another PC directly, not through a switch, you got to use a crossover cable to do that, or they can't talk to each other. However, on modern switches and routers, now a lot of them will have on, and this is the high-end ones, not these bottom ones, okay? They have a MDIX ports, or auto MDIX, okay? What that does is, it sits there and listens when you first turn it on with the wire plugged in or plug the wire into it. First thing it does is it listens on the 2 wires and sees, where did I just hear something? Whichever wire it heard stuff on, whichever pins it heard it on, it goes, okay, that's what I'm receiving, so I'm going to transmit on the other one. So now you can plug into that switch or router either a straight through or a crossover cable, and they both work. Well, what comes in that box for you is straight through cables. That's what every time y'all go in to buy a device, that's what they throw for you in the box, is a straight through cable. Okay? But if you're trying to hook that box to another box, it won't work, because you need a crossover, because they don't have to talk to each other. Does everybody follow on that one? But if it's a higher end, which is the devices we've got in here, not counting those that she and I have been looking at this morning, they've got, and newer ones. Now, the oldest ones we've got in here actually are not AMDIX, but the newer ones for the last 15 years or so are AMDIX. Okay? So some of the ones stacked behind Gabriel and Tyler on the floor back there, some of those don't have it on. Okay? but we've got old boxes back there too. They still work.
Are you talking about the light gray ones or the dark gray ones?
Actually, some of those you're looking at are actually hubs instead of switches. Okay? So we got some antique stuff in there. But you've got on the high-end ones, normally the AMDIX, and then you don't have to worry about straight through versus crossover. However, if you're still hooking a PC to a PC, which people do. Those of you that play games do that once in a while. You want to hook up to the other person's machine. You can do it wireless, but you're okay on that because you're going back to the wireless device on it. Or even if you went wireless straight across, guess what? You don't have just go to wires you're listening to. So you don't do that way. But if you're going to do a wired one, you're going to hook those two straight together, you got to use a crossover cable. Now, as far as the cable looking, it still looks exactly the same. The question is, when we look at our two plugs on the end of how the wires are, and if we hold these two right up beside each other, you'll notice the colors match exactly one beside the other. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So you're seeing the same exact colors on both ends in the same order.
Yes,
Right?
that's
Straight through cable. On the crossover one, we're going to flip the orange and the green wires. That's what we're going to do. Okay? So that's all the AMDIX is. It's a nice convenience feature for everybody now. Doesn't do anything really as far as making the machine run better or whatever. It just makes it easier for us to hook the devices up. We don't have to worry about crossover and straight through cables anymore. And then on the big data centers and everything, you are hooking a number of switches straight together, and you will hook routers straight together a lot of them. So you, as the network administrator, just made your job easier because you don't have to worry about. All you need is just a file of straight through cables to work with normally. But some things still will have not be using the AMDIX on. Barracuda firewalls a few years ago, which are routers, were actually still using regular ports on them, not AMDIX. And when I went to hook up one of those, and that's one of those high-end perimeter firewalls we were talking about just a while ago. Threw me for a little bit because the cable they put in the box that came with it was a straight through cable and said use the Ethernet cable to connect to your router. Well, Ethernet cable to me normally when they use that term means a straight through cable because that's what people mostly mean. In their case, they just meant it was one of the two. When I called them after I'd worked on it for an hour and then I figured out the problem, like crossover, and it worked. Everything went to working fine for me. And I'm going, why did I just get rid of another 25 here? And it looks like you've been doing cable before. Because I will pull hair off my head trying to get some of these devices working together. And students have been a few problem for a few years pulled out along the way too. And I called them after, emailed them after I got that working and we put a straight through cable in a box and we needed a crossover and you said use an Ethernet cable which inferred a straight through cable and it was a crossover and they said, we said Ethernet cable because an Ethernet cable can be a crossover or a straight through cable. And we just always put straight through cables in everything we do. And we just gave you a cable is all that was. That wasn't intended to be used. And I'm going,
Then why would you put it in the?
you've just sold these people a firewall for a couple of $1,000 and you can't even put the correct cable in the box and do your directions correctly along.
Or just call it what it is.
Or call it correctly on it. And don't use go with some strength. So you will run into it sometimes still out there, is what I'm telling you. The other part is, like I told you, people will hook up PCs to PCs. Now, Okay? Generally, when you want to hook a PC to a PC, you're doing one of two things. The most common is you're playing games. But Tyler and Gabriel decided they wanted to play a game that they needed on their two computers, and they decided to just put the two computers together.
Land party.
Hmm?
Land party.
Okay? See, I told you. The other one is if you want to move your stuff from one computer to the other computer, to your new computer, you'll do the same thing. But you don't do that very often. But, and the one I would tell you on that is PC Mover is the piece of software yet to do that. It's the only software that will actually do it. I've never found anybody else that's got it. You can move data from one machine to the other with different things. But if you want to move the programs from one machine to the other, PC Mover is the only product, and it's been out there 20 years or so.
Yeah.
Wow. And nobody else has come out with it, okay? And that it will actually move your programs and all of your different tables and everything from one machine to the other. Now, it costs like $65. You only get to use it for moving from a specific machine to another specific machine. You can't do it to move to any other machines. Okay? Or you can buy one that's 3 copies of it to do it 3 times, or you can spend some more money and buy it for a number of times. So they got ones as a higher. But it works well. It does the job so that you can actually take your stuff that if this is a Windows 7 machine, she just bought a Windows 10 machine now. She installs Windows 10 on that machine, takes this machine where it's been pre-installed on it, and takes this machine, puts PC Mover on both machines, and it comes with a crossover USB cable. So straight through crossover cables are not just dealing with network cables. It deals with USB cables. Also, USB cables can be straight through a crossover. Oddly enough, a few years ago, and I wished I'd bought them when I saw them, but I didn't buy them when I saw them. Dollar Tree was selling crossover USB cables for $1. I should have walked out with everything ahead.
How do you tell if it's a crossover USB cable?
You gotta read the label on it. Because I don't think you can look at the plugs and tell on it. You gotta look and find where it's written on it somewhere close to it. Okay? That's the only place I've really ever needed one either, but I should have bought something. I got it. Because Blacklink that makes PC Mover, now they'll say PC Mover without cables, because you can actually do PC Mover wirelessly, and you don't need to worry about the whole bit. Or you can do it with USB, or you can actually use the network cables like we were just talking about a moment ago. Now they plug the USB on it or wireless, but they'll give you all 3 options. The USB is going to be the fastest way to get everything moved from one machine to the other. They're using USB 3, I believe, now. Okay. And 4 has just the standards. 4 is out there, but I haven't seen anything using 4 yet. Okay? And I don't know what the distinguishing feature on 4 will be, because y'all can look at USB cables and tell if they're 2 or 3. If they're blue on the connector, it is a 3. If it's not blue, normally black or white, then it is a USB 2. But if it is blue, and even the port where you plug it into is going to be either blue if it's 3, or if it's black or white, it's 2.
And the hardware has to be compatible with the USB port, correct? The hardware has to be compatible with the port.
With the 4, and you can do on 3, but 4 is designed to do the power carried across the USB port. Just like you can do on the high-end Ethernet cables now, you can do power across Ethernet. Okay? Where that really comes into big on the plate on it, which is the reason for USB 4, is on your IoT devices. Think about it. That sprinkler head out there in the yard, if it was an IoT one, which it isn't, but there's plenty of them out there that are. We don't have power running to that sprinkler head. So if it is an IoT device, we gotta get some power to it for it to be able to do the IoT stuff. Not much power, because it's very minimal power it uses to do the IoT intelligent stuff on it, but you gotta have power getting to it, so you run it across the USB cable. Or you can actually do power across wireless,
Yeah, I was
done
gonna say
high
that,
level
like-
too. So you can actually send power through your wireless connection. That's the really weird one today.
I think that would be smarter with that, if it's out in the yard.
That's the way you probably really would do on that one, but it could be that you were in USB on, it, but if we were running some other stuff in here, whatever, we may well be connecting stuff.
Or if something's not working, your wireless, you have to get in and mess with it, make it do what it needs to do, sometimes better to connect it direct.
So that, if you do a direct connection on it, it'll be faster than if you do
Yeah.
wireless on. The other part is if you do wireless, your security level is dropped.
Yeah.
Way down, if you can do it wired, you've raised your security level.
That wireless gets so,
IoT stuff is horrible.
it's,
Security problem. And we actually had one of the big attacks came through using the wireless devices a year or two ago. WannaCry is what comes to my head, but it wasn't WannaCry. WannaCry is the ransomware one, but there was something else that we had that was shutting down all kinds of stuff. And they did it through the fact that wireless devices have no security sitting on. And they attacked everything from the wireless devices.
you sacrifice that for the convenience of it, so it is.
So you got to, and so you're having to balance usefulness versus security. I'm trying to find a balance. All right, any questions for me? Because we have run up onto the hour. And that there is chapter, module, whatever we might call it, like 7. Okay, that we have covered the whole thing today. Any questions for me on it?
No, but so we looked at the ability to be secure. They looked at that's all this.
There's tricks. It's not, I do my phone myself all the time. Like a client,
You make it.
that
The more security.
there's like a little sessions you can go through and that's teaching you how to do it all fast and
So you got to-
like
so you
a
got
big
how
person,
much, how secure do you want to make it, while still making it useful.
like certain things.
Just make it that it doesn't take costs.
The first test we had, I made like
Your house. And there's a spot.
Here, I didn't know if you
so I was like, I made like 67. Really? I didn't know like 500.
There's so many terms going back and forth, that's just.
We're having to balance the security.
Yeah, I just kept trying to cram it and get it over like that.
So, you're continuously on that.
Unless you just want to like write everything down, but I think it's way too much.
I was just sitting here listening to this repeating
Well,
something.
you can have
Down the
another
phone,
one of those.
because I like that, the first time in my head. Like, I can't do crap material and have this give
One
me
that
hard
sends
times and
out
stuff.
on that, they
I
probably
can
find
memorize,
my
I
house.
just memorize it, and it'll just be there.
You was really
Well,
more
notice
me,
the videos.
more person that
You also
learns like
generate new signal from
on the job.
Yeah, yeah.
Reading doesn't really do me very much. Like if you show it to me, you explain to me what you're showing to me, I'll learn. Like,
See, that's the problem I'm having with math. I'm the same way with sense, but with math, they're learning sound, like, they're not,
That's
the pictures and they're not, they don't tell you the real reason. What I'm saying, this is kind of the same thing.
Do electronic
Yeah. If I can get pictures of it, I'm figuring that eventually when I have more data, so I don't, I try not to obsess too much about the not knowing why, because the why helps me a whole lot, but just memorizing, like rote memorization of what it is, you know, how it flows.
I don't want to fail the class, but
A lot of programmers.
You
they
probably are not,
hate
it
all
takes sometimes the first week, the first
They'll go
little bit of a
manual
class,
programming
you just kind of like to get your balance, and after that, kind of.
I just don't like writing stuff.
Sometimes.
Bring the work else to
I have, you know what I have in my bag, so that I don't waste tons of paper on that, what it already for.
The one day.
I work it on the school because I would literally be going through tons of this on some of these problems.
Just give it that.
Step after step.
So you got to balance that.
Old stuff so easy, you just don't think about it, as you get older, it's like, dementia, I swear to
A
God.
lot of times.
I can remember all this stuff, but I can't remember like pay my water bill.
And.
It's like, oh, yeah, it's fine.
We just want to make it easy.
Yeah, that's gonna be the trick.
There'd be a whole lot easier for me in
It's
the
trying
building.
to go back and pick out what.
If they just take the doors down and the door down in the classroom, we could all just walk in and out, no problem, right?
It's a steady guide.
But what's gonna happen to all of our devices in here?
All-
They're gonna all walk out real well, right?
Oh,
So we have to balance.
That would be nice.
All right, then I will see y'all this evening. I say, as far as I know, next week is supposed to be a quote normal week. This was supposed to be also, other than I knew I got training that I had to do in an hour. That was gonna mess up my days with other classes, but otherwise this week was supposed to be long. And I knew I had the Atlanta trip yesterday. Next week, I'm not supposed to do any of that. Other type of items, but that doesn't mean at this point last Thursday, I didn't know I was going to do Atlanta. I found that out and about 30 minutes. My whole world can change on short notice.
Oh, yeah, that's, like this morning, I'm running late because nobody can get transportation going nowhere.
And I need
Like
to
my
mark
bus
y'all
drivers, kids
here.
are like, I'm like, why did you guys even, there was like a whole line of people trying to get their kids into the school late. And I'm like, why did y'all even have class today? If
Oh,